So people think my car's in the intersection, I didn't run the red light. No. Any part of your car, can be the bumper, can be the half the car, the whole car, doesn't matter. Some part of your car has to be breaking this line. This would not be, if that light turned red right now, this would not be a red light violation because this vehicle is technically within the intersection.
At the time that it turned
red. At the time it turned red and this car turns, they have a crash, this car is going to get a violation for ARS 28772, which is a fail to yield left turn. This car will be all right as long as they're not speeding or anything like that. If they're coming through, say it's 45 and they're doing 45 and they're here when that light turns red, this is what we call unit number 1. That's the vehicle that caused the collision. Well, in this case, we have a vehicle that was back here when the light was yellow, and actually when the light cycled red, based on the pictures we were just looking at, the vehicle was only about here. So still not even at the crosswalk, let alone the intersection. And that light cycles to red, this car goes, boom, they hit right there.
So does the pedestrian have anything to do?
Pedestrian is crossing here. This car cannot make the left once that pedestrian enters this side of the roadway. He's walking along. This car has to wait until he clears off. If the pedestrian is over here, he can go through.
Okay.
He has to wait till the pedestrian is clear of his half of the roadway.
Exactly.
So he's waiting for this pedestrian. So he's probably moving, inching, and we'll see the video in a little bit. He's probably moving, inching, waiting. This guy clears, and he starts. This guy just completely runs the red light. Based on the photos I just looked at, this guy ran the red light. So now this is unit 1. This one is not technically in violation, although I've seen officers cite that one even when the car ran a red light, because the way the statute reads is you cannot make your left until it's safe to do so. And actually, I think the actual language says cannot fail to yield left turn when a vehicle is close enough to cause a hazard or create a hazard. So this vehicle, technically at a speed that's not stopping, and you can tell if cars are stopping or not, is close enough to create a hazard. So you could do that, and I've seen officers do it. In this case, I wouldn't. The passenger in this minivan, after this collision, there's a light pole here, okay? This sticks out over the street. After it hit here, it veered off, went into this pole, and at that point, it killed the passenger.
So, were there any skid marks or anything to say that there was any proof of the speed of the van in violation?
We're going to look into that. We're going to look into what's called an accident reconstruction. And an accident reconstruction is the science of a collision, of a crash. So reconstruction, and I've had people call me and say, you do accident reconstruction, I need my car fixed. No, it's not the kind of reconstruction it is.
Yeah.
Accident reconstruction is based on physics. It's based on Newton's 3 laws. An object in motion stays in motion. An object, unless it's acted upon by an outside force. This would be an outside force, and the other outside force would be the engine powering, propelling that vehicle through. But an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. That's a rear end accident where somebody stopped and they get hit. And then in every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, meaning this car is expending energy into this car, but it hasn't expended all of its energy yet, so it's going to keep moving after that. It bounces off and it hits the pole. That's the equal and opposite is when these cars hit, the force that comes from this car will be transferred into this car oppositely and force it to spin, rotate, whatever it does. These cars will always, there's pre-crash, there's crash, and there's post-collision. And in accident reconstruction, we start with, it's reverse engineering. We start with the vehicles at rest. It'll be this one, and wherever this one wound up. And then we do our calculations and measurements backwards until we get to this point. You always start with that rest and you move backwards. So in this case, we'd have to figure out a speed. This vehicle came off the crash, post-crash, and hit the pole into the second crash. We determine a speed there, and let's say that speed is 42 miles an hour. Then we got to figure out this car, which probably spun around, rotated, ended up somewhere like this. We got to figure out the speed this car departed the accident as well. And let's say this one departed at 15. Well, then we got to figure out what are the angles these came in. This is angular momentum. So we got to figure out the angles these cars came in. So this one we're going to assume is at 0 degrees. Okay, we're going to work our way off of that. This is going to 0. So we're going to have this one coming in at about 110-ish or so degrees, and we're going to factor those degrees in. That's going to all play in. So we're going to have angles, we're going to have speeds, we're going to have coefficient of friction, which we call our F value, which is the tires on the actual asphalt of the roadway, and how we determine what that friction value is, because everything moving has what's called kinetic energy, and energy does not just disappear, it has to dissipate. You have to transfer energy. It cannot be created nor destroyed, but you can transfer it. And this car at let's just say 100 miles an hour is going to transfer 100 miles an hour, or whatever foot-pounds that calculates out to be, into this car. That's why cars crumple, falling all the way from the front to the back, depending on how much force is put into them. Cars are designed to crumple at certain areas to protect the occupants inside the vehicle. That's a transfer of energy, because if it was just rigid steel and it didn't move, all that energy is going to get transferred into the occupant.
That's why cars are made the way they are.
That's exactly why they're made the way they are, because all that energy is being absorbed. The engine block they're designed to drop so they don't come back into your lap. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of force to drop an engine block. And so you'll see that cars get hit really hard from the front, that engine block will be just sitting on the ground. It just drops. That's a transfer of energy. That's a big transfer of energy that saves the occupant. The airbags, when they come out, it's the energy transfer. It's also slowing down what's called your impulse. So if you go from 60 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour in 2 milliseconds, your internal organs won't survive that. But if you slow down that impulse, you elongate that 0 to 60, and now you hit a pillow, and you're slowly stopping slower than you would if you just hit the steering wheel. That's spreading out your impulse, which is going to save your life, typically. That's the whole thing of a stuntman jumping off a building and landing into an airbag. Mm-hmm. If the airbag wasn't there, he'd come to a dead stop in a millisecond, and that would kill him. But the airbag slows him down to where it spreads that impulse out, and that's what saves lives.
Nice.
So that's what we have going on here. So